today I'll be making baklava. This is a fantastic little recipe. The baklava comes out a little bit lower in calorie than your average baklava, which is something I think you might enjoy. So let's get started. We're going to start by making our syrup. We're going to need 2 cups of water, 1 1/4 cups of sugar, 2 tablespoons of lemon juice, and 2 tablespoons of honey. I like to use organic honey. I use organic wildflower honey. Like the honey on the market nowadays, it has corn syrup in it. I stick with the organic, and there's a huge difference in taste as well. So we're going to add our ingredients to our saucepan. We're going to add our water. We're going to add our lemon juice. We're going to add our sugar. And we're going to add our honey. I'm just going to put 2 tablespoons of that in there. Stir that up well. We're going to bring this to a boil, then lower the heat and let it simmer. While our syrup is simmering, we're going to prepare our nuts. What I have here is 1 cup of pistachio nuts and 1 cup of walnuts together. I'm going to add them into the mixer. I have 3 tablespoons of sugar and 2 tablespoons of cinnamon mixed in here. I'm going to add that as well. I also have 2 tablespoons of butter, which I'm going to add in there as well. Also, we're going to pop those in there and just pulse lightly. I'm going to get in there. Get in there after that first pulse. Scrape everything down and give it another very fine mix. You want to get them as fine as you possibly can. We also have some more coarsely chopped pistachios. We're going to decorate. We're going to put those on top of our baklava. So these are ready. We're going to take them out of the mixer and pop them into a bowl. I think what's off-putting about a lot of baklava recipes is that there are huge quantities involved. Most people are making it with a regular commercial Filo Dough, and it's not really ideal. I mean, there's so much butter and there's so much Filo Dough, and the portions are, I mean, you're actually making a huge amount of baklava. I mean, you could feed an army with some of the recipes that I'm seeing out there. So this is going to be a little bit less. This is something that you can actually make for your family. You can make for, to have in the house for a few days. I mean, I find when you make those huge recipes, you wind up with all this baklava. It does, the Filo Dough does lose its crispiness after, the first day or so, and you will wind up with this soggy, mess. So this is an actual ideally sized recipe. We have our mixture out. As you can see, it's very, very finely, almost a cream actually, almost a paste. I don't know if you can see that in there. And that's what we want. Smells fantastic. Our syrup is still boiling away, simmering away. It needs a few more minutes. It's just about ready. As you can see, it's still a little watery. This does thicken on cooling. We don't want to reduce this too much to where it's a thick syrup. Otherwise, our baklava will not absorb it. It won't be absorbed by the Filo Dough, and it won't be absorbed by the nut mixture. So we just want to give it another 5 minutes maybe, and then remove it from the heat. Total overall cook time about 25 minutes, 25 to 30 minutes. As you can see, it's reduced. This is where we started out, about a finger into the pot, in the saucepan. The syrup is just about ready now. As you can see, it has the foam on the sides. It's nice and foamy. It's foaming up, and it has just a little bit of cling to it. It's lost. I don't know if that is carrying over to the video. It's lost that completely watery texture, and it has a little bit of a syrupy look, and that's when we remove it from the heat and let it cool. Once you remove it from the heat, you can skim off. There's just going to be a tiny bit of foam. You don't have to, but you can skim off. I like to skim off a little bit of that foam. And then we're just going to let it sit there and cool. To make our phyllo dough, very simple mixture. We're going to need about 2 cups of flour, some olive oil, about 2 tablespoonfuls, and about a cup of milk, maybe a little bit under, and some salt, about half a teaspoon of salt that I've already put in there. You can't really see it, but it's in there. So we're going to take our flour, add it to our salt. We're going to add our olive oil, about 2 tablespoons. I'm going to stir that up a little bit just to get that mixed up a little bit. You don't really need to work that in there too much. You do want to get that salt mixed up, however. And then we're going to slowly incorporate our milk. Just scrape in from the sides like that. Bring it all into the center. I'd say about 1 1/4 cups is where we're at now. And that's just perfect. We can see it start pulling away there. And at this point, you're really going to just have to get in there and work on the dough. Just as if you were kneading bread. Until it all comes together. Once that's all together and you have a nice bowl, there might be a little extra flour on the side there. Just pop it into a bowl, pat down on it, and cover it with your lid. We're going to let that rest for a few minutes. This will make our dough more workable, so we're going to give it about half an hour, 20 minutes. Once our dough has sat for a bit, we're ready to roll it out. We're just going to flour. I like to work on wax paper. We're going to flour that a little bit. Make sure any surface you roll on is well floured. I'm going to secure the edges a bit. With a little bit of dough. And what we're going to do, our dough is much more malleable now. What we're going to do is separate it in half. And take the first half and roll it out. The shape we're aiming for is a square. Move this out here. Just keep flipping it and rolling, pressing towards the edges, applying pressure as you roll out, and releasing as you come in. Rolls out fairly easily. want to get this as thin as possible without it being paper thin. Like I said, this is very different than the commercial stuff that you buy. This is actually healthier for you. It doesn't have a lot of the additives that the commercial ones have. You get a much better, it's much better tasting. The taste is fantastic. I mean, it really doesn't compare to what you buy commercially at all. The texture is different, the taste is different. That's the good thing about making things yourself. You can get something that you're really not going to get with a commercially purchased product. You can't, it's very difficult to make this baklava with the commercially prepared stuff. The Filo Dough just won't hold up the way it will with this. Because this is going to be a little bit thicker, you can also use a lot less. I find I enjoy this type far better than I enjoy anything commercially purchased. It's really worth trying. Now this is about the thickness on that now. I might want it a touch thinner. I am going to cut this down into an exact square. So we're going to roll out just a little bit more. It's actually quite thin. I'm starting to be able to see through it. I don't know if that's translating onto the camera. It's very easy to work with, as you can see. My edge is a little bit thick. I want to roll that out just a little bit more there. And once I do that, I have an almost square shape. What I want to do is actually cut it into squares. I like to use a ruler because it's critical. I use a metal ruler. It's critical that these are absolutely square. I'm just going to use the ruler and cut halfway down the middle. I'm going to lay each side one over the other. Cut right down the center there also. Again, I'm going to lay over one side over the other. I'm going to cut off any rough edges I have there. Back in with my dough. Now these are still too large for me to use. As you can see, I have a nice square there of all my Filo doughs layered, one on top of the other. But this is still a little big for what I want to do. This will make it rather large baklava. I want something a little bit smaller. So what we're going to do is cut these in half. These are 6 by 6. And what we're going to do is cut them in half. Layer them again, one on top of the other. right down the center. So we have a nice stack of evenly shaped Filo Dough squares, as you can see. Like I said, you don't have to worry about this drying out. You don't have to worry about covering them. Very easy to work with. So what we're going to do is we're going to preheat our oven to 350. I have a baking sheet here lined with foil that I'm just going to butter lightly. Just grease it. I have about 2 tablespoons of melted butter. Butter is critical when you're working with Filo Dough. You want to butter every layer. So we're going to lightly butter our baking sheet. Set that aside. And we're going to start assembling our first pastries. What we're going to do is we have our butter here. I don't know if you can see that. We have 2 to 3 tablespoons of melted butter there. We have our filling. We have our Filo Dough squares. They're 3 by 3. This is a 3 by 3 size. You could actually go larger. I find the larger, the 6 by 6 is way too big. I'm going to take my first sheet of Filo and I'm going to lightly brush it with butter. I'm going to take my second layer of Filo Dough. I'm going to lightly brush that with butter as well. I'm going to take a little bit of my filling. You don't want to go overboard with this. Just a little bit in the center there, if you can see. Press it together to form a nice little mound there. And then we're going to take 2 of our edges and press them together to a point. We're going to turn it around, take our other 2 edges, and press them together as well. These are actually a very pretty baklava when they're done. Until you have a little packet like this. We're going to brush that lightly with butter as well. You can actually do that after it's in the pan. And we're going to pop that on our baking sheet. Like that. I'm just going to proceed to fill the rest of them. Again, taking our first sheet, brushing it lightly with butter, taking our second sheet, brushing that lightly with butter as well. Take a teaspoonful of our filling. Don't go overboard. You don't want your filling to start pouring out of these. Press it together again in the center. Take your 2 points, 2 opposite ends, and press it together like so. And then take your other 2 points and press them to the center as well. Make sure you press firmly there. You give them a nice good pinch and press down so that they don't come apart while baking. Pop that on your baking sheet. You can always brush them down with butter later. And proceed to fill the rest. Take another sheet, brush with butter, take another sheet, brush with butter again, tablespoon of our filling, press down. I'm going to flatten that mound down just a little bit. Our 2 opposite ends, our first 2 opposite ends, and then our other 2 opposite ends. You want to make sure you leave the opening there at the edges. A, it looks prettier, and B, it allows your pastry to breathe so it doesn't puff up and ooze out and all that. And it also allows later in the syruping process for the syrup to work its way in there and get that filling nice and moist. Pop that on our baking sheet. I'm just going to finish filling the rest of these. It really goes quite quickly. Our first batch is ready. I haven't rolled out the second half of the dough, so I'm just going to pop these in the oven. The recipe should give you approximately 16 to 25 of these, if not more, depending on how thin you roll out your phyllo dough. Like I said, you don't want to go too thin. You want those edges there. You want that you want to be able to see those layers. You don't want more than 2 layers. You want to make sure you butter that lightly. Make sure you get into the nooks and crannies so that you get a nice color everywhere. And just pop those into the oven. Our oven's been preheating at 350. We're going to pop these in. They take about 15 minutes to get done. And I'm going to roll out the rest of them in the meanwhile and pop these in the oven. As soon as our baklava is ready, it's out of the oven, our first batch. They're nice and golden brown. They move around on the tray. You have to take them and dip them into the cold syrup. Now what I like to do, just before I do that, is add just a dash of cinnamon, just before I add them in to the syrup. And we take our first one, it's still a little hot, and dip them in there. And what you kind of do is just take the syrup and keep pouring it over the baklava until it absorbs as much of that syrup as it can. You can do 2 or 3 at a time. My saucepan is on the small side, so just 2 will be fine. You want to let them sit in there for a few minutes. This phyllo dough tends to not fall apart the second you touch it also. You do still want to be gentle with it. It is rolled on the thin side. It will flake and break like the rest, but it's still a little sturdier, so it holds up well. Once those are done, you drain off as much as you can and set them on a platter. We'll be adding the rest of the syrup, whatever's left, to them as they sit in the tray to prevent them from drying out as they sit also. But you want that syrup to get all the way in there to the filling. You want the phyllo dough to absorb as much of that syrup as it can. Like I said, just keep pouring it over the top there. Let them sit for a couple of moments. Make sure you do it while they're hot, though. You have to do it while they're hot. You want to dip the hot pastry, the hot baklava, into the cold syrup, into the cool syrup. This is an absolutely fantastic way of having your baklava. I really enjoy this way. It's the single servings. They're absolutely delicious. Like I said, they are a little bit lower in calories than your regular baklava. As you can see, they held up well. They really didn't open up too much on us during cooking. These look really pretty on a plate once they're syruped and the pistachio nuts are on top of them. They look very pretty on the plate, very appealing to the eye. As you can see, you don't let them, they do get more colorful. They get more color after you syrup them, so they may look a little light. You just want them browned at the edges there as they're cooked, as golden brown as you can get them, but you do want to take them out before the edges do start to burn on you. You don't want that to happen. So you do want them out before that. And like I said, once they're done with this, you're done dipping them in the syrup, they become even more golden brown. We'll get a close-up of that when we're done. Once we have our syrup on, we want to get our pistachios on. So here are our finished, both of our batches are out. Here's our finished baklava. Came out really nice. They look really pretty. As you can see, I just wanted to give you a better visual. They're much more golden brown after they're out and the pistachio nuts are on. Or you can serve them just as they are. You can serve them on a plate with some honey. You'll find you'll have some syrup left over. It's actually spooned into the plate. Just spoon it into the bottom of the plate like that. To serve, you can drizzle a little bit of honey on it. It's always a nice touch. Just drizzle it around the plate. And over the pastry. I don't know if you can see that. Pretty, really delicious. I'll give you a close-up of that with the camera. I hope you give it a try. I think you'll really enjoy this. It's definitely a different baklava, different way of having it. And you won't be able to get anything like this commercially prepared. This is, like I said, one of the joys of actually making things for yourself. You're going to get something different, something fantastic that you really can't get anywhere else. It's a very nice treat. Like I said, I hope you give it a try. I hope you enjoy it.